Hey, this is Pamela Schneider. I'm the retail editor for Blue Book Services, and this is the Produce Reporter Week in Review. Greg, I've been sleeping most of this week. What happened?
I wonder if you got my cold from last week's Week in Review, because I think I was contagious.
Contagious via Zoom. That would be a nightmare.
It was the Super Bowl hangover and stuck around, and you got it a week later, I guess.
Yeah. Well, we had a lot of retail news specifically, and one of them was a follow-up to something that we've been, of course, that is the biggest retail news in this year and probably next year, is the ongoing kind of just as the cookie crumbles as far as Kroger and Albertsons merger goes. And Richard Smoley came up with some new points. What were some of those, and what are some of the groups that have come forward to oppose the proposed merger?
There are a lot of groups that have been outspoken in opposing it in the produce industry. We've got Western Growers, California Fresh Fruit Association, Colorado Fruit Association. There are a handful more. He quoted a story of the FTC looking at it and commenting, and the chair of the FTC, a lady named Lena Khan, brought up some of her concerns and made a parallel to the Safeway Albertsons merger from back in 2014. And you and I both covered that merger, and it was interesting to look back on that and do a little research on and just remember kind of how that all went down. And I grew up in the Pacific Northwest, so I was very familiar with Haggen stores, and they have a great reputation there. And boy, they crashed and burned in California. And did it bring up some memories for you?
Yeah, I mean, it feels like it was so long ago, and yet it was, what was it, 7 years ago? Back in the day, I can remember flying into San Diego to visit a Haggen store on this amazing, epic California trip that I did. And while I was there to write a feature about this new division in Southern California, I noticed, boy, there sure aren't very many people here. And that was probably a month before Haggen epically crashed and burned and filed for bankruptcy. And if you recall, it was regulatory approval that Safeway and Albertsons had to sell off 146 stores, and they sold them to Haggen, which had a couple dozen stores, if even that many, up in the Northwest, and they planned a massive expansion. And right now, the merger divestitures, we're seeing all kinds of numbers thrown out there. We've got 100 up to 750 of the stores. If you aren't like having your little like notebook over here, Safeway and Albertsons together have almost 5,000 stores. So, excuse me, it is a significant number of stores that we're talking about. But when you look at the map, which I'm going to throw up here in front of our faces here, that Kroger and Albertsons have put together, the little points of light that they've got here as far as store overlap, kind of like, boy, there aren't actually not that many that overlap, are there? So
Yeah, there's really not a ton of areas. I mean, there are some key areas. There's some overlap in Texas, Chicago, Southern California, Pacific Northwest. Looks like Colorado is pretty semi-competitive there. I understand why there's concern with people about if they were to divest 500 stores. So that would be 500 fewer stores serving consumers. But I think that shows a little too lack of faith in our economy and our business community, which is the strongest in the world still after all these challenges we're facing. I mean, if they are in markets that need to be served, someone will fill that. And if there are too many stores that can't serve enough people, they close down. We see it. Even Walmart's closing stores that they don't like because of theft or underperformance. I mean, it happens. That's the whole nature of this thing.
right, yeah, then some of the uh, opposition that we're seeing come through is coming from the seller community that sees Kroger, Safeway, and Albertsons as some of their their largest buyers. And so, of course, they're concerned about buyer consolidation. The volume will still go somewhere, theoretically. But from a consumer standpoint, there are certainly some of these stores that could use an injection of something new, I'm sure. In my market, at least, there is no Kroger. Kroger, Safeway, and the Safeway entity that's in Austin, Texas, or Central Texas, is a distant third to Walmart and HEB. So to see a little bit more life and a little bit more competition come in, I'm sure would excite some consumers. I see those Kroger delivery trucks all over town all the time. So they are pushing hard on the delivery aspect and pushing hard into these new markets. I could definitely see a lot of this orange that's on this map be overtaken by the aggressive marketing and the aggressive expansion that we've seen Kroger doing. I would say that Safeway Albertsons is definitely one that has not been as aggressive as, and even, I'm just going to say it, not as successful as Kroger has been over the last couple of years. They've had some hard times, especially after the merger financially, and being able and to have some kind of injection of life into some of these stores is going to make them quite a bit more competitive. And Kroger's got a different way of doing things. And when Safeway and Albertsons merged, they did some different things with their buying offices, doing some competitive stuff between them. And then they did some consolidation, especially with the Acme stores on the East Coast. So there's a lot of moving pieces in this, and I don't think that we're going to get an answer out of this, probably without a lawsuit, anytime soon.
No, and also I don't anticipate a Haggen situation.
No.
We've seen a couple, big runs by retailers who didn't have much business doing such a thing, and it didn't work. And I'm sure everyone paid attention to that.
Yeah, and where would be the venture capital that they come up with to do this kind of thing right now? Because that's not exactly like everyone's flowing in that kind of cash right now. So
it's all going to the greenhouse.
It's all going into greenhouse. Apparently, that was another big story that we had this week, was that Plenty has a deal with a real estate developer that could be worth up to $1 billion. There was very careful language in that news release, not outright calling it $1 billion deal, but we're back into the B's, not M's there, billions, not millions. When we're talking about
a little
greenhouses.
skeptical of that number. Up to $1 billion could mean $1 million.
It could be tens of dollars. Tens can be up to $1 billion. And then the other greenhouse news was actually cheaper super fancy strawberries. Oishi, the Japanese greenhouse firm that was famous for having the $50 strawberries that they were selling in New York, has now launched a $15 strawberry. And I would really like a blind taste test between those two, if I could, get this to the right person. Please.
Well, right now it's only available in the East Coast, so you would have to make a special trip.
A special trip just for strawberries. Maybe they'll show up at Central Market by some kind of weird fluke. One of these days, we walk in Central Market, and my husband will take a picture and be like, "Hey, what's up with these $15 strawberries?" And that I can manifest that, make that happen.
This is a lot more reasonable than 50.
What else were we going to talk about? I forgot.
Pizza.
Oh, yeah. On a lighter note, you had another story this week about everybody's favorite pizza topping, and somebody said it's mushrooms. Really?
That's right. This group called Slice, which is a group that represents independent pizzerias, determined that in this year's Slice of the Union report that mushrooms finished 22 as the #1 pizza topping. And they also went out of their way to point out how pineapples dropped more than 6% from 21 to 22. Seems kind of haterish.
I cannot abide this pineapple slander. I'm sorry. Like, there are cases where pineapple savory is a good thing. And maybe I'm not talking about dumping a bunch of watery canned pineapple on a pizza, but a really nicely grilled pineapple can bring just the right sweetness to the right circumstance. But I really feel like mushrooms is a bold choice, and I'm sure the Mushroom Council was really happy to see that information. But I would like to see some more like fun mushrooms on pizza. There's a whole lot of options out there that we can work with, but I I was really surprised to hear that mushrooms were number one. Just kind of seems like the pepperoni lobby would have something to say about that.
Well, that kind of reminds me of how Kansas coach Bill Self never wins Coach of the Year because that that award always goes to someone who surprises the media more than anyone else. And so the one who's picked to win it, it doesn't surprise anyone. So I'm wondering if pepperoni is just kind of there's not much fluctuation in the pepperoni market. Whereas mushrooms, they're really on a high.
You gotta bring KU into this. Sure, whatever. I'm out of here. That's it for the Produce Reporter Weekend Review. If you are not getting the Produce Reporter newsletter, you need to go to producebluebook.com and sign up. I tried to get that out. This cold is so bad that I believe that it transferred through Zoom.